What's up, everybody? Welcome to Casual Shenanigans Tech, a podcast where Dave and myself, Jeremiah, help you answer your computer build or computer problems. Hey, Dave.
And I'm Dave.
You are Dave. So we'll be getting straight into it this week with the Rig Report.
Dun, 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 dun.
Both of us upgraded to 32 gigs of memory.
Yes.
How's that gone for you?
Fantastic. Except for right before this podcast, I noticed that Windows is only seeing 24 instead of 32. So that's new.
That is new. Now, I have committed 45.9 gigs, so I'm guessing Windows is still using a page file.
That's what it is then.
But I've gotten up to 23 gigs being used at any one time, which seems pretty crazy, and I haven't even bumped up the amount that the Adobe Suite's allowed to use yet. So just CrashPlan has used almost 7 gigs, and then it's interesting how much more memory different programs started using once the memory was there. Like Vegas went up to a couple gigs, Handbrake is used more. Like it's kind of cool, actually.
There's kind of like a built-in overhead to protect you, I guess.
Oh, look, Photoshop already reallocated the RAM. How nice. How nice.
That's some nice RAM you have there. It'd be a shame if someone used it all.
Not used it, allocated it.
Oh, perfect. So it's just idling.
Like taxes. It's not robbery, it's taxes. Anyway, our first question comes from GameLad. He wrote into casualshenanigans@gmail.com, just like you can. And he says, "Hello, I've listened to a lot of your shows. I want to build a small PC. I already have a PC, so I'll be able to use some of the parts again. Here's what he has. An i5 4690, a Blood Freezer 50H CPU cooler. I have never heard of that, but the name Blood Freezer is pretty cool.
That's pretty hardcore.
An MSI GTX 970, a 600 watt power supply, 8 gigs of RAM, a 120 gig 840 EVO SSD, and the Seagate Barracuda 1 terabyte, and an MSI Z87 gaming motherboard. Now he says, I've looked at the BitPhoenix Prodigy Mini ITX case in black, which I like. I would really like it if you would help me find the right parts. So it already sounds like he's got most of a good build. Could you look up the Blood Freezer 50FH and see what the heck that thing looks like? I'm
imagining like a Viking cup of some kind.
Well, I'm curious if we can fit it into a small case. So I'm going to look up the MSI Z87 G43 and see how big that is. That is a full micro ATX. Nope. Full ATX. Hold on. Bringing up the product information. That is an ATX motherboard. So he's going to need at least a new motherboard.
I think this is a water cooler. See what you think. Blood Freezer is not mentioned, but that might be a retailer.
By Asetek. Okay, he did mention Asetek. That could be it. The
Let me look up Asetek. Yeah, let me look up the 50FH.
Yeah, see what you find there.
There's no hits at all for that, so I wonder if that's just a typo. It's missing like the one. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything for that.
Well, let's assume that maybe it is that water cooler, or let's assume it does fit in this case, and he can figure that out later if it doesn't.
Yeah.
But the BitPhoenix Prodigy it's the cool little mini ITX case. You've probably seen it before. Are you familiar with it? It has handles. People like it for LANs and stuff. It's a cool case, but if you have a 4690, you cannot use your existing motherboard in this case, obviously, because the case is much too small. So I'm going to add a 4690, I'm going to add a 4690K to my cart and PC part picker. And that way, it'll show us only compatible motherboards. So he has a Z87 chipset. I don't know if he overclocks, but with that cooler, well, no, he doesn't. He has a 4690, so he does not overclock.
Right.
Let's see. So he doesn't actually need that crazy nice of a motherboard. I like the ASRock H97. What does that thing look like? That has built-in Wi-Fi. That's kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah, now he's got this nice memory. He's got this Ripjaws 2133 RAM. Now, for DDR2 or DDR3, Dave, can you explain what normally happens when you put nice RAM into a cheapo motherboard?
In most cases, it won't be able to hit those speeds.
Yeah, and this, because like this board I'm looking at is quoted at 1333, 1600, and 1066. So
yeah.
looks like it's just going to downclock it, which isn't, I mean, the end of the world, but just so you're aware, that's probably going to happen.
At that point, just get cheaper RAM, save a few bucks.
Well, he's reusing the RAM.
Oh, right, that's right.
But I don't think he needs to replace anything else. I mean, his power supply should all fit. His graphics card will likely fit. Let me see if it's the MSI. I don't see any reason that wouldn't fit. 970s aren't that big. GTX 970. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, because the BitPhoenix Prodigy supports cards up to 317 millimeters, which is over a foot. And the 970s are like 10 inches long, so not a big deal. So I think the BitPhoenix Prodigy is a cool case. You'll probably like it, and the ASRock H97 motherboard should fit the bill for what you want, so we're going to send you links to those. And of course, as always, write back in if you have any questions or want clarification on anything. Next email is from Chuck. I think your show could use a few tech questions that aren't just new build advice. So here's one. Chuck has a problem.
Oh boy.
I've been having problems with my PC ever since I upgraded my graphics card to a GTX 970 last year. I've had my system blue screen or the driver crash a number of times, even a couple of times while I was playing GTA with the Seal Slappers. I have not been able to upgrade my NVIDIA drivers since the GTA Game Ready driver because whenever I do update the driver, I get random blue screen of death crashes. I suspect it's because my system power supply is too small for the system with the new GPU. Here's my current rig. Should 650 watts be enough? Not what size power supply do you think I need for this? He has a 650 watt Seasonic SS650HT power supply, Gigabyte Z87 motherboard, 16 gigs of RAM, 4770K overclocked to 4.5 gigahertz, Hyper 212 Evo, a GTX 970, and two terabyte hard drives, an SSD, and another SSD. Power supply is most definitely not too small. I was running two 970s off a 650 watt Corsair, and Seasonic makes high quality stuff, so you can assume that your Seasonic is plenty high quality, not a problem. So Dave, if we have a system that's blue screening when you try to update the graphics driver, and it's blue screening sometimes while you're playing games and the display driver crashes, what do you think the problem is?
Well, first of all, I just out of curiosity Googled the power supply, and it has like insane reviews, like literally perfect reviews everywhere. So that's impressive, first off.
That's pretty cool. I hear great things about Seasonic. I've never owned any of their stuff, but people seem to really like them. Yeah,
from what I can see on Newegg, there are no negative reviews. It's like 110 5-star reviews. But if you're getting blue screens of death, that to me sounds like you have a bad card. I'm thinking either hardware failure or like a very severe software conflict, like one of those two.
I mean, you don't think it could be like a like just a corrupted driver?
Well, I mean, that would go under the software for sure.
Okay.
Which is why I would say try and clean that driver out and install the latest good one before you try to do like an RMA or anything for the card itself. Definitely try to troubleshoot the software stuff first, but especially if him doing driver updates like consistently leads to a blue screen of death, but the current one works. If the card is actually being used, like use a performance monitor like total mind blank Afterburner.
Yeah, MSI Afterburner.
MSI Afterburner, and look at your card while you're actually playing a game on your current driver and see how much of it is actually being used. Make sure it's actually being used in your game. But he does say that he does get blue screens on the current driver too.
Yeah, so with GTA 5, I get blue screens if my overclock on my graphics card is too high. For some reason, GTA 5 does not like high card overclocks. A lot of people have that issue, so I back down my card overclock. But if he's getting it in other things and the driver is crashing, my first thought is it sounds like an unstable graphics card overclock. But he doesn't say whether or not the graphics card is overclocked. It's a Gigabyte G1 Gaming Edition. Now, you didn't get great overclocks out of your G1, did you?
No, but those are stock overclocked.
They are. So, with anything you're troubleshooting, the first thing you want to do is return everything to as stock as possible. Because if something's messed up, we want to know what it is. So,
and what that means for a factory overclocked card is you're going to have to, what looks like downclock it, but really you're approaching factory clock speeds.
Yeah, because it's possible that your factory overclock card is just a little bit unstable. It happens. That would be kind of rare, but it happens. So if you download MSI Afterburner, you should be able to underclock using that, shouldn't you? Let me see. I'm opening mine up now.
Yeah, definitely. Because I used MSI Afterburner on it.
Yeah, you can. I can downclock mine to -90 on the core, -201 on the memory, using MSI Afterburner. So that's a start. I would downclock the card and see if it's still stable, or see if it gets more stable. You could also try downclocking your CPU temporarily, but if it's just a display driver crash, I highly doubt it's the CPU. The CPU would more likely lead to the blue screens of death. That sounds like that could be CPU or GPU. But if it's only crashing for gaming related stuff, I kind of doubt it's the CPU. You should also use MSI Afterburner. Keep an eye on the temperatures.
Yes. Ooh, yes.
I had this happen with a friend just the other week. One of his SATA cables had stuck up just enough that it was hitting the fan in his GPU and preventing it from spinning, and the card would just heat up over time, and then the system would eventually crash. So look for anything crazy like that. But yeah, I would say first thing is downclock that GPU. See if it gets more stable. Downclock anything else you've got overclocked temporarily. See if it gets more stable. Do you think... I think it's almost no chance this is a RAM issue. Would you agree?
With GTA 5 pushing the CPU and the GPU so hard, I'd say it's unlikely that it's RAM.
Okay. But you could try, he's got 4 sticks of RAM, so he could try pulling 3 of the sticks of RAM and then just seeing.
I wish I had 4 sticks of RAM.
oh, Dave. But yeah, you could try that.
Mm-hmm.
See how that looks. And then, if it could be a corrupted graphics driver, I've sent you a link to Display Driver Uninstaller. It's got a mode where it does a very clean scrub of your system, which is not necessary these days if you're just installing new graphics drivers. But if you need to get rid of a bad one, it very well could be necessary. So do the version where it's like a complete uninstall. It'll walk you through it and completely wipe out that driver, download the latest one from NVIDIA, or let Windows Update pick it for you. You could always do that. And then run the same stress test again and see what happens.
Makes sense.
What did you end up with overclocking wise for your 970?
I don't think I quite matched yours, but the total clock speed I think came pretty close. Like I think, man, it's been so long now. What was your clock speed roughly? Would you say?
I think I ended up running 1450 boost, something like that.
Okay, so I was a bit lower. I could almost get right to 14. The problem was that Joel I had Joel's 970s, I bought him from him. He bought 2 different models, so I was crippled by the weaker card.
Mm-hmm. But you had one G1 Gaming Edition and then one regular one, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember it was kind of odd because even your special Gaming Edition one didn't happen to overclock as well as my kind of bargain basement Zotacs, which is kind of luck of the draw. The Silicon Lottery is what people refer to it as. And that just means that you might have just not gotten a card that can overclock that well.
Yeah.
It happens, but I would definitely start with the clock on the graphics card, work it down some, let us know if you got any more issues, and we'll help you work through them. All right, up next is Austin. Austin says, hello, I'm a newcomer to the podcast, but I very much enjoy the show, so thank you. Thank you.
Nice.
He says, I'm building a PC at around the $1,000 mark, and I am having trouble picking out a video card. Right now on the list, I have an R9 390 with 8 gigabytes of onboard VRAM. Do you think that would be a good card with my i5 4460? I don't know a whole lot about AMD cards, and I wanted you guys' thoughts. So I have a list of the rest of his parts to read off for you.
Okay.
He has a 4460 quad core. He has a Hyper 212, a ASRock H97 motherboard, 8 gigs of Crucial Ballistics RAM, 1 terabyte Seagate Barracuda hard drive, R9 390 graphics card, a Fractal R5, an EVGA 750 watt power supply, Windows 10 gigabyte wireless, blah, 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 G502 mouse, the rest of the stuff, keyboard, mouse, monitor, all that.
Wait, did he say G502? Oh, I see it, G502 Master Race. That's right.
Yes. The Honda Civic of computer mice.
I don't think any mouse that comes with a cushioned rubberized shelf for your thumb is the Honda Civic.
Oh my. So anyway, an R9 390 with 8 gigs of onboard VRAM, would it be a good card for the rest of his build? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great card.
Yeah, 8 gigs of VRAM, you are definitely set for the future. I play at 4K, and I have 6 gigs of RAM, and that is nowhere close to being an issue. So
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely lean more towards red myself if I didn't. I'm so reliant on Shadow Play for NVIDIA cards that it's hard to pull me away. But if you're just looking to play games, that's a fantastic card.
It is, but I will say the one he's looking at is $350, $343 from
That does seem a
Newegg.
bit high.
Well, it's as equal to or a little bit better than a 970, but let's see if there's a better option for it.
I feel like I've seen better sales for that card.
Yeah, I feel like I have too, but right now, it's only a feeling. I feel like that's 390X territory, but I could be wrong. You can get a Gigabyte 390 for $304. That
sounds closer to correct.
Yeah, that seems a little more right. And then for $380, you can get an R9 390X. I would get... Okay, actually, here's what I'd do. For $345, the same amount of money, I would get the Sapphire R9 390. Sapphire is one of the best AMD card partners. And this Nitro version, it's a triple fan. It will probably overclock better than the others, or than most of the others, and you should be able to overclock this to 390X territory, which is GTX 980 territory, if you're curious. But that is an awesome card, and if you were tempted to go NVIDIA, the 390 is pretty dang similar to a 970, so let's just see what 970s are going for. On the off chance there's been a big drop in price, we could recommend that. Okay, they're starting at $305, same thing. So there's no real price advantage. Go with whichever one you want. I think 8 gigs of onboard VRAM, if you plan on keeping this for a while, is great future-proofing. Okay, up next is Garrett. Hey guys. First off, let me thank you for your time and effort into creating the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast. I've been an avid listener since around episode 50, and it truly is a great listening experience. I've enjoyed getting to know each one of you virtually. Well, thank you, Garrett.
Nice.
The point of this email. I'm starting to build my first PC specifically for gaming. I've always played on consoles, so this PC tech world is really new to me. It's crazy all the stuff that I'm learning, like what actually makes a PC and how it runs. Anyways, I wanted to run some specs by you guys to see what you think. Hopefully this will make it to the tech podcast. I've done quite a bit of research on different parts and prices. I've also been looking through different builds on websites such as PC Part Picker. However, I know those sites can be somewhat unreliable. The users on them can be somewhat unreliable. Here's what my parts list contains so far. He's going for a micro ATX build. He's picked out an i5 6400, an Asus Z17 or Z170M micro ATX motherboard, 8 gigs of Kingston DDR4 RAM, 120 gigabyte Kingston SSD, Western Digital Caviar Blue 1 terabyte hard drive, a GTX 970, and a Corsair 500 watt 80 plus bronze certified power supply. This is all going into a Thermaltake Sierra V21 case. So much tech there, my brain hurts. Altogether, this build will end up costing me $850. A friend of mine says that my system won't be overclockable because of the i5 6400. If you have time, could you please explain what overclocking is. Like I said, totally new to all this. I'm not afraid to admit it. Hopefully I'm headed in the right direction. Let me know what you guys think. Since this is our last question, we will also use this to talk about a little bit of tech for the week, if that's okay with you, Dave.
I think we're about to broaden some horizons here, aren't we?
we are. So correct me if any of this sounds wrong. So here's overclocking. You buy this processor from Intel, the i5-6400. Let me look it up real quick just so I know what its basic specs are. It's an i5, so it's a quad core. Okay, it's a 2.7 gigahertz quad core that turbos up to 3.3. So Intel is selling these processors at 2.7 gigahertz. That's the speed. Now, they make a bunch of these things, and some of them can go faster than 2.7 gigahertz. That's actually not all that fast. But when you're making a processor for the consumer market and you're using cheap fans that you get a bundle in there, and most people don't really need a ton of extra performance, you generally pick a nice conservative clock speed that all of the processors, or most of the processors that you make at this speed, will run fine, because you want them to be stable and reliable in the future, and you don't want them to run too hot or anything like that, because, the faster they run, the more power they use, the hotter they are. Does that all sound correct so far, Dave?
Yes.
But most processors can safely run faster than what they come stock from the factory. Just like you could take a car, you can make some modifications, get a little more power out of it, and you're not necessarily going to break anything. Now, if you put a turbocharger on it and try to instantly give it like an extra 150 horsepower, you're probably going to break some stuff. But you can increase things a little bit and you're generally fine. And that's the same thing with processors. Some of them can be increased a lot, some of them can be increased a little. But Intel does not let you overclock all of their processors. They have their special line, the K line. That's their unlocked processors.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that let you overclock them. So an i5-6400 is not unlocked. It's not a K. It doesn't have K after the 6400. So it cannot be overclocked. So, Dave, he's got a 2.7 gigahertz processor. If it was unlocked, based on your experience, how far do you think that could overclock in theory?
And how many cores on that one?
It's quad core. It's an i5,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. From 2.7, I bet you could get to a nice stable, let's say at least 3.6, like a nice conservative 3.6. What would you say?
I would probably agree, because like every processor is not the same. That's the reason they pick a nice conservative speed, is because
and actually,
can we
talk about that right here?
Yeah,
too?
Go for it.
Binning. I actually had the Wikipedia article up because I was curious about the exact definition for this and why certain clock speeds are picked. So I'm learning stuff tonight too. You've heard this term before too, like binning, right?
Yes.
So semiconductor manufacturing is an imprecise process, and sometimes only 30% of the chips from like a certain line they're trying to create are actually functional at the specs that they were given for creating that chip. Basically, it's a very precise, very complicated manufacturing process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is, if you have a chip that only has, say, a 30% yield, is the example here in Wikipedia, where the design did not do well and it can't reach, say, those clock speeds, you can actually turn off parts of the chip or lower the clock speed, run it slower to get more functionality out of it. And that's where a lot of the clock speeds from your CPUs come from. But a lot of the times, when a batch of CPUs or other chip is finished, a lot of those chips could, in theory, go a lot faster. Like, it's just because some members of that batch can't handle those speeds doesn't mean that that's the case for all of them. And so that's why overclocking is generally like it's much more common than it used to be. I think, because a lot of the chips from a batch are going to have that extra bit of overhead because they're playing it safe.
They're playing it in some cases they're playing it very safe. We can tell you some funny stories. Like, there was a very legendary processor for gaming called the i5-2500K a couple generations ago, and those things are monsters. Like, people are still using them these days. But they, like, I personally have had 2 of them running at 5.2 gigahertz, up from 3.3, I think, stock.
Nice.
Like, that's just kind of ridiculous. And, you know, it's fine. So, if you want to overclock, you would need at least the i5 6600K if you were going to stick with this motherboard. Now,
Right.
Here's the next question, Dave. Does he need to overclock?
Overclocking is never what I would consider like a need. It's something that I do because I've built a ton of PCs, and I'm definitely the kind of person where like I want the maximum bang for the buck while still being a cheapskate as much as possible. So yeah, I'm big into overclocking, but I wouldn't say it's a requirement.
For gaming, especially. Now, okay, 3 or 2.7 gigahertz, that's a little bit slow.
Yes,
But-
for a modern CPU, that is kind of low.
But it is a Skylake CPU, and those are great for the clock speed, like per clock. Those are awesome processors. So it's probably more akin to like a 3.3 or 3.4 gigahertz proc from a couple generations ago. So you can maybe think of it as like a stock 3570K, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
based on a little bit I know of them. So do you need to overclock? For gaming, you're not really going to notice that big of a difference in most games. There are some games. GTA 5 is very CPU dependent. Basically, as far as you overclock it, you will continuously see small improvements. Most games aren't like that. Looking at the rest of your build here, this is a very nicely balanced build. I think you did a good job researching it. Reasons you may not want to overclock, you're putting this all in a micro ATX case. So when you overclock, heat is the biggest thing. If you don't want the chip to die early, if you want it to still be reliable, you need to cool it better than the stock fan can cool it. And that's how people get into water coolers and giant fans and everything. So in a micro ATX case, it's that much harder. So stick with the stock Intel fan. You know what? The CPU will run a little warm. It'll run its at stock speed. I bet you won't even care. And it's the type of thing, if you feel like your CPU is just too slow, you can sell it. You'll take a little bit of a loss, and you could step up to the 6600K, which is an overclockable part. If the extra little bit of money is not a big deal, you could go ahead and get the 6600K, run it at its stock speed, which is like 3.4 gigahertz, and then later down the road, if you want to overclock, you could. But you definitely don't need to, and you're not going to miss that much performance in your situation. There is extra free, quote unquote, free performance laying on the table here, but there's no reason you have to get it. You know, it's fun, it's cool. I think everybody should try overclocking if they want to get the most performance out of their computer, but you really don't have to. I mean,
it's not as scary as it sounds at first. Like, as long as you do your research, study the guys that are out there, and don't jump the gun. Like when you overclock, you're supposed to move your clock speed up in steps, right? You move it a bit, you bump it a bit, you test it for a while, you stress test it. You know, don't read a guide, go right to the end and say, that's the speed I want, and just punch in the numbers into your BIOS.
Which I definitely have done.
Oh, I've done it before too, yeah. I mean, it's the quick and dirty method, and sometimes it works, but usually it doesn't. I've had about, I'd say half and half success with that. And usually, like long term, it's not going to stick around.
Yeah. And that's another thing to keep in mind. Overclocking does, in theory, reduce the lifespan of your parts, but how long are you keeping the parts anyway, you know? Like most,
it's one of those, if you're cautious about it, it's like, oh, your CPU will only last, 15 years instead of 25.
But if you're like most people, every 5 or 6 years at least, you'll probably be replacing it anyway. So if you want this first time, just get this regular processor, use it. And then if you like it, you like PC gaming, you think you're going to stick with it, you could always upgrade. You could upgrade this one to an overclockable processor, or you could just wait till the next generation that you feel like upgrading to. You don't have to upgrade every generation that comes around, but you could wait, 3 or 4 generations from now.
Oh, yeah.
Upgrade and get an overclockable one then. Now, I do actually want to critique one part of his build, though, before we end his question. He has a lot of really nice parts, but he has a Corsair 500 watt 80 plus bronze power supply. So I'm guessing that's the Corsair Builder power supply. What do you think about that, given the rest of his build?
Go for the better power supply. I mean, you don't want to cheap out at the thing that's putting electricity through all these nice new expensive parts. Think about it like that.
Now, Corsair is a good brand.
Yes.
But well, yeah, they're a very good brand, but cheap is still cheap. So if you can afford a little bit of a nicer one, get a nice one. Just the extra quality, it's really just buying yourself some insurance that the rest of your parts will be taken care of. And a nice power supply will stick with you for the next several builds if you treat it right and no major technology changes. So I'd probably look at just like even 500 watts is fine, but getting like a certified gold or platinum power supply. You can probably get a certified gold one from Corsair for like an extra $20-25 usually. It's worth it. I'd do it. Everything about it's higher quality. The cables will be higher quality. I mean, it'll just be nicer in general. And I don't think you'll regret it.
And I mean, I've built a computer just recently with that power supply, and it's a great power supply, but with the effort and money you're putting into the rest of your parts, go ahead and get something a bit nicer that's gonna last.
And in the same token, if you could spend the money on the 6600K, not the worst idea. It is a little bit faster, even if you never overclock it. It's still good. It's still better.
Yeah.
So if you can afford it, go for it. If you can't, really don't worry about it. All right. With that is the podcast. So
wait, Jeremiah. I'm going to stop you here, actually.
Oh, okay.
You know what we haven't done tonight, Jeremiah?
Oh, no.
We haven't spent enough time on PC Part Picker, and I'm seeing that our next email is a build help email. I feel like we need to spend some time on some PC Part Picker.
That's true. We haven't really just put together a whole build tonight, have we? Are you talking about scrubs?
Yeah, I'd say, you know what? Let's do an email. Let's do one more.
All right, take it away, Dave. Take it away.
All right, we got an email here from Scrub Gaming, and he's looking to build a computer, $1,000 USD max. Thankfully not including monitor, keyboard, headset, or mouse, so that's some overhead right there we've got to play with. He wants to play games like Battlefield 4, Counter-Strike, Dark Souls 3 in all caps. He's excited. At just 1080p or 1440p, 50 to 60 FPS, which is interesting because he's saying, don't worry about the monitor, but he's got two different resolutions here. So maybe that's like a future upgrade, you think?
I'm guessing so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look. What else has he got here? He'd like enough RAM, 16 gigs, and to edit and render videos for his microscopic YouTube channel with Battlefield and Souls. That's quite the combo. He's looking at a build, but he can't link to it. It's $550 on PC Part Picker's build guide.
Which I don't think there's any way that a $550 build is going to have 16 gigs of RAM.
No,
and
that's
play
like
Dark Souls 3 at 1440p, 50, 60 FPS or better if possible on high. I don't think all of those things are going to happen at the same time. But anyway, let's see what we can do for him. I mean,
and seeing he couldn't link his build, I'd say let's just can we build it?
Yeah, let's just take that budget.
Okay.
Do we assume he needs Windows? He doesn't say either way. He doesn't.
If he's got monitor, keyboard, mouse, headset, let's assume he has Windows.
Okay, and he can write in if he doesn't, we can sort that out. But all right, what are you feeling for the processor? Should we middle of the road this thing?
I know he's on $1,000 budget, which is why I think it's interesting he went for that 550 build. I know it's tempting. I think he needs an Intel K of some kind. If he's doing video rendering, let's get him something nice.
Oh, good, because I already had a 6600K in the cart.
What? That's crazy.
Now, someone left a comment on a recent episode of the podcast saying that the Hyper 212 is an extremely overrated CPU cooler, and there's a better one by a different company for like $10 more. Guess what CPU cooler I'm putting in the cart right now?
I feel like with that cooler, you just don't need any improvements. Like, if you don't have to think about it, why think about it?
I don't think it's overrated because it's honestly almost as good as my $90 Nashua cooler, and it's way closer to Dave's $100 water cooler than he probably wants to think about. So,
oh yeah, for sure. For the average user.
Welcome to the elitism. For RAM, now it really matters with Skylake. With DDR4, it matters if your RAM is faster. That gives significant, noticeable performance increases. So I put DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM in there.
Nice.
Do you have any issues with that?
No, but I wish we could do like a co-op build here because
That would be nice if we could both be collaborating at the same time.
that'd be ridiculous.
I feel like we're going to run into a problem. I feel like this is all a little bit too good to be true at the moment. Dave, can you find me a good power supply you think will fit in this budget while I'm working out storage?
What's our total for the CPU and the cooler and whatnot right now? The RAM.
Well, I've already put in a few more things. We're at $523. I have the motherboard, CPU cooler, RAM, and CPU.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Okay, so if you ever want to have a little bit of a scare, Jeremiah, go to the power supply section, sort by lowest price. There's a 480 watt Logisis for $13.
I mean, could we do the eBay special potato masher?
I almost want to try it, but not plug anything important into it.
Yeah, like the rest of your house.
Yeah. Get like a car battery and just hook it up to it.
In the driveway with a fire extinguisher sitting there.
That sounds about right.
Not saying it's gonna explode into flames, but
I'm just saying we're going to be prepared for an explosion. Oh, there's a lot of options here. I'm actually having to go back a few pages. I'm looking for a 80 plus bronze Corsair. It's not the builder, but it's just bronze. I think we can do a bit better. Let me look a bit further.
Can we do better?
Actually, let's sort by rating. So I was digging deep into the price pit, which is probably unnecessary.
Welcome to the price pit.
Oh, here we go. EVGA Supernova 80 plus gold for $80. That's 750 watts.
That's pretty good.
And just in case we need some wiggle room, I'm going to get you a secondary option to just have in the chamber.
Oh, good, because we need a little wiggle room.
Oh.
Yeah, I already added in the other stuff. We don't know if he needs an optical drive, but that's like $15. We can add that later. So assuming he doesn't need Windows, a 6600K Hyper 212 gigabyte motherboard, G-Skill RAM, a Western Digital Caviar Blue 1 terabyte, hard drive, a Crucial 250 gig SSD, a gigabyte 970, a Fractal R4 case, and that EVGA power supply brings our total to $1,050.
We gotta trim just a bit then.
We do. So, first thing I'm going to say is the Fractal R4. That's $70. That's an amazing case for $70. But it's going away.
No! He's gotta stare at that thing!
The Corsair 200R, which, as you know, is one of my favorite cases, that's down to $50 again.
Well, that's $20. That's still a good case.
That's still a good case. We'll put that in there. All right. We got to trim a little bit more. Let me cut this motherboard out of here. That's a Z170. We don't know if he wants to overclock, but if he wants to get all that performance, he needs at least the option to overclock in the future. What is the cheapest Z170 we can get here?
That one's gonna be all you there.
ASRock. The ASRock Z170 AX1. What an attractive name. I'm so glad chipsets haven't become impossible to understand.
It's like ancient Egyptian markings.
Wow, this is the first motherboard I've seen in a while where every single USB port on the back is all USB 3.
How many ports is that?
6. I mean,
so that's nice.
It's not a ton, but it's something. I mean, that saves us like the tiniest little bit of money. If we bump up a little bit more, we can get the ASRock Z170 Extreme 3. I like the Extreme series from ASRock. We'll add that. We're down to $1,010. Can't really save anything on the RAM. if we want to keep an SSD and a 1 terabyte hard drive, we can't really save anything. I think you'd agree we want to keep those.
Yes, definitely.
An SSD is so worth it.
I trimmed some off the power supply. See what you think of option number 2.
I mean, I think it's fine. I looked at it. The CX600.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's their cheap line.
It's got all the cables attached, so it's a little bit messier for cable management.
I mean, that's a better way to do it, in my opinion, but whatever.
Wait. Hold on. You're against modular power supplies?
Yes, we've had this talk before.
No, we haven't.
Haven't we?
No.
Oh.
What do you have against convenience and clean wiring?
I'm not against modular power supplies. I do not prefer modular power supplies because it's an extra plug that has to be plugged in correctly and can fail. And where everyone talks about it being all clean, on a regular power supply, you have one pack of cables coming out the back of the power supply. It's on the side that can disappear out the cable management hole in the back of the case, and you can stuff all the cables somewhere you can't see. It's really hard to put the back cover on, and then you get over it. With a modular power supply, the whole front of your power supply is full of cables you have to plug in if you have even a medium build, and it covers up your fan, and it's extra plugs that have to be seated correctly, and it's more points of failure, and I don't like it. I don't like how it looks. I think it looks a lot less clean than a conventional power supply, and I don't like having the additional points of failure, and I don't like that it blocks my bottom fan.
I've gotten 2 things out of this discussion, Jeremiah.
One of them is that I'm wrong.
Jeremiah hates modular power supplies. Number 2, Jeremiah has issues with plugging cables in.
It's points of failure. It's points of failure.
If you ever need help plugging your cables in, I'm here for you, okay?
It's points of failure.
Your opinion's a point of failure. Moving on.
Do you at least understand where I'm coming from? For me, the looks is one of the biggest things. People talk about how clean they are. I really don't like having the whole front of my power supply full of plugs. To me, that's actually less convenient, especially if you need to go back later and add an extra cord, like because it's modular and you're adding something to your computer. And if the plug is like in an inconvenient place and you already packed all the rest of your...
Oh, there it is. Oh,
you already packed all your
bores you.
You already packed all your wires in tight and everything, and now you got to get another wire around them and then plugged in to an inconvenient plug. I don't know. I just don't like it.
I can understand that point, but I've got actually 2 examples of why you're kind of right and kind of wrong.
Okay.
My personal power supply here at home, the one that's been going through like 3 builds now, the Thermaltake, has a really nice, clean-looking grid for the cables in the front. It's like flush, and it looks really nice. And I plugged all my PCI Express and all cables on the inside towards the motherboard tray, and then they tuck, and then I Velcroed them together, and it just looks really nice and neat. Far less cables than if I had got a power supply that supported, SLI, all my extra hard drives I've had over the years. That'd be a mess. On the other hand, my work computer had a 1,000-watt modular power supply, and apparently their designs for that one, and I think it was like an off-brand, like OEM, it was a pre-built computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think their design philosophy was, well, if they need these extra cables, we should probably put like 30 plugs on each one. When I went to like add a nicer graphics card to that computer just like a year or 2 later, first of all, I had to undo all of their cable management, which is what made it look clean before. And then the extra modular cables looked awful. They had so many plugs. And by the end of all the upgrades with the SSDs and the extra hard drives that I would add to that work computer, almost the entire back of that power supply was covered in cables. And they were like curled and bundled and tucked everywhere. It was awful. So in that case, it went wrong. Here at home, I knew what I was going to be doing with this computer and planned accordingly. It all worked out. But like you said, if you kind of like have to upgrade and add cables along the way, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
kind of a do whatever you feel is right. But we're going to put in the semi-modular power supply because it fits your budget better. This is a very solid build. Now, I feel like I want to throw in my standard boilerplate caveats.
Okay.
When he says 1080p or 1440p, 50 to 60 FPS on high, don't chase an arbitrary designation like high. that doesn't really mean anything. One game on high will look like another game on ultra and another game on medium. It's all relative, and the performance is really all relative. So high on one game will probably run worse than medium on the same game, but it doesn't really mean that high on another game will run better than medium on the first game, like it's all kind of arbitrary. So I don't like it when people get stuck in their heads that they want to run everything on high, because what does that mean? They just want to be able to turn everything up for games they don't even know about, that don't even exist yet,
And like technically better than a console isn't that difficult, because technically better is, is not that much. But to get, ultra settings or high settings, that's going to be different for every game. And a lot of times it's not really needed. I say that as someone who loves cranking settings all the way up. Like a lot of times what you're actually getting is not necessary.
And you will run into something called the law of diminishing returns, where you can put hundreds or thousands of dollars more into your build, and you will not get a corresponding increase in visual fidelity or performance, because there are games like The Division, which just came out, and there are already people in our group who are unhappy at how demanding the game is. Now, the game is absolutely gorgeous, and it will beat your system to death, which means you won't get to see how great it looks until like another 3 or 4 years from now, when you can come back with a much faster system and turn everything all the way up. That's good. But people are, not just in our group, but people on the internet are unhappy, and they're blaming it on optimization, that they can't run the game maxed out on their 970.
my 980 Ti is at like 95 to 98% usage most of the time in that game. Like, optimization is not the issue. It's a brand new, fantastic looking game.
Exactly. It's good that it's that demanding. That is a very, very good thing.
It scales well.
It does. And it means that games are being pushed. They're being pushed out of their comfort zone. They're being pushed past the limits of what we currently have. Dave and I each have the fastest gaming card on the market right now. And he can't max it out at 1440p, and I can't come close to maxing it out at 4K. I'm on high 30 FPS. The game still looks amazing. Same thing with The Witcher. I'm on very high, but also 30 FPS. If I want to play at 60 FPS, I got to drop down to like medium. Guess what? The game still looks amazing. Don't worry about
high. That's a 4K too, right?
Yeah, it's a 4K.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what settings it's on. Pick the frame rate you want, lock it to that, and then turn the settings up until it runs smooth and stable and everything else. If this is a big upgrade for you, you will like how the games look. But don't worry that other people can turn it up higher than you. Like, that's just, it's an arbitrary metric that you can always chase. And the difference between the potato masher, which is less than $400, and my desktop, which is quite a bit more than that, for playing games at 1080p, the potato masher is like 80% as good.
Yeah, it is.
Like, just because it can run most everything on high or medium,
Yeah.
So there's really no reason to say that you want to run things at a certain setting, because that setting is going to constantly change. The goal lines move. You'll always be chasing it, and you'll always want to dump more money into it. And even Dave, who is the biggest graphics whore I know.
Wait, you want to talk about ambient occlusion for a bit, Jeremiah?
Nope, not this episode.
Some graphics settings, maybe
next time. But he even like has limits. Everybody has limits. And
like for the 980 Ti that I'm running, like you, in The Division, I'm going to do air quotes here that no one can see. I'm settling for 1440p, 55 to 60 FPS on a mixture of high and ultra settings, and I don't get to have my NVIDIA PCSS soft shadows. And I'm okay with that, because the game looks amazing, and a year from now, if I'm still playing it, I get to turn that dial up a bit higher, and it's a forward-looking game. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, bad optimization is like the original Crysis, where even if you load it up today, your processor won't go above like 30 or 40% usage, and your graphics card won't go above like 60 or 70% usage, but the game will still be running at a bad frame rate. That's bad optimization. That's stuff in the game's code that does not let the game use all of your system. Good optimization is a good-looking game that can run everything at 100%.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And my personal example, I ran Grand Theft Auto 4 on a 980, and I got 42 FPS.
Because that game is ass.
Yep.
In the performance department. So
and now it looks like it too.
yeah, now I'm not just singling Scrub out, because I don't think he meant it like that when he wrote it in. But people always write in and they say, I want to play everything on high or everything at whatever.
Yeah.
You can do
high
that.
Is a moving target.
High is a moving target, and you can do that with way crappier gear if you want to. Like high at 30 FPS, or maybe medium at 60 FPS. I would be willing to bet you can't tell that much of a difference. And actually, I've got an idea for a future contest we might do. Not a contest, but like a challenge for the Casual Shenanigans hosts, where we might see how much of a difference can you really tell. Because there is a difference, but it diminishes very quickly. And most games, if they've got good art direction, they look good at medium. They still look great. And get the low, very low, shadows sometimes get turned off. There's no anti-aliasing, stuff like that. It can start to look kind of bad, depending on the game. But most games at medium or up look good. And if
I will say though,
yes.
As the resident graphics whore, Dave, Diminishing Returns, Evil Viking 13. Do you remember when Joel posted up a graphics comparison from someone else's like screenshot gallery with like some of the more advanced graphics options that were toggled on and off? Yeah, I got all 5 of those 100% correct because I know what to look for, and it matters to me. But in gameplay, and for most normal people that are not Dave, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you could pick it out in screenshots, but if it was like fast-moving gameplay and you were trying to be competitive or something, you might have been able to do it, but you very likely would have missed a couple of them.
I would have gotten a couple wrong, probably.
Yeah, just because like when you're actually playing the game, that stuff fades away pretty quick. That's how I enjoy consoles.
Then again, if I play games like I usually do, I would be staring at the textures and the wall and the lighting, and I probably would notice a lot of those things.
That's true. Like you normally do is a little different from the way everybody else normally does. But
again, the normal people.
Yeah. But scrub right back to us if you want to make any clarifications, if you need us to add windows to the budget, if you need to swap parts out for anything else. No big deal. Get in touch with us. We'll hook you up. Everybody else, you can always write in to casualshenanigans@gmail.com to be a part of the show. Thank you for writing into us. We really appreciate your questions. We're still working on getting caught up. And we appreciate you guys. And until next time, stay casual.